Imagine standing on the frozen tundra of Siberia, watching a massive, shaggy creature the size of a school bus lumber through the snow. Its curved tusks sweep through the ice, its thick fur rippling in the Arctic wind. You're not watching a movie. You're not dreaming. You're watching a woolly mammoth, an animal that went extinct over 4,000 years ago, alive, breathing, and reshaping the landscape around it. This isn't science fiction anymore. Right now, a team of brilliant and controversial scientists are actively working to make this happen. They have the funding, they have the technology, and they genuinely believe, that within the next decade, something very close to a woolly mammoth could be walking the earth again. Welcome back. Today we're diving deep into one of the most jaw-dropping scientific projects of our lifetime. We're talking about de-extinction, CRISPR gene editing, and the real-world attempt to resurrect a creature that vanished from this planet thousands of years ago. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, your understanding of what's possible in science will never be the same. Let's start at the beginning, and I mean the very beginning. The woolly mammoth, Mammuthus primigenius, roamed the earth for hundreds of thousands of years. These were not primitive, simple creatures. They were highly intelligent, highly social animals that lived in complex family groups, communicated with each other, and played a crucial ecological role in the ecosystems they inhabited. At their peak, woolly mammoths ranged across a massive stretch of land that scientists now call the Mammoth Steppe, a vast, cold grassland that covered much of northern Asia, Europe, and North America during the last ice age. These animals were engineers of their environment. They knocked down trees, disturbed the soil, and maintained open grasslands by grazing and trampling. The Mammoth Steppe was one of the most productive ecosystems on Earth, home to bison, horses, lions, and countless other species. Mammoths were the keystone species, the creature that held the whole system together. And then, roughly 10,000 years ago, they were gone. The exact cause of their extinction is still debated. Most scientists believe it was a combination of climate change at the end of the last ice age and hunting pressure from early humans. As the planet warmed, the open grasslands shrank. Forests replaced the steppe, and humans, armed with spears and organized hunting strategies, picked off the remaining populations. The last known woolly mammoths survived on Wrangel Island in the Arctic Ocean until about 4,000 years ago, just when ancient Egypt was building the pyramids. We barely missed them. But here's where the story takes a wild turn. Because the same cold environment that killed the mammoths also preserved them. Permafrost, the permanently frozen ground of Siberia and the Arctic, acts like a natural deep freezer. And inside that freezer, we've found something extraordinary. Mammoth remains so well preserved that scientists have been able to extract intact DNA. Over the past 2 decades, researchers have recovered mammoth specimens with hair, skin, muscle tissue, and even blood still inside them. One specimen, found in 2013 and nicknamed Buttercup, was so well preserved that liquid blood was found in a cavity in her body. The DNA extracted from these specimens has allowed scientists to sequence the woolly mammoth genome, to read the complete genetic blueprint of an animal that has been dead for thousands of years. And once you can read the blueprint, the question becomes, can you rebuild from it? That's where CRISPR comes in. If you haven't heard of CRISPR before, let me give you the fastest, most important science lesson you'll ever get. CRISPR stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats. I know it's a mouthful, but the concept is breathtakingly simple. CRISPR is essentially a molecular scissors, a biological tool that can cut DNA at precise locations and either remove a piece, replace it, or insert a new one. Scientists use CRISPR by programming a guide RNA molecule to find a specific sequence in a genome. When the guide RNA finds its target, it brings along a protein called Cas9, which acts as the cutting enzyme. Snip, the DNA is cut. Then the cell's own repair machinery kicks in. and scientists can direct that repair to insert whatever genetic information they want. The implications of this technology are staggering. CRISPR has been used to treat genetic diseases in humans, to engineer disease-resistant crops, to modify mosquitoes so they can't spread malaria. It won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2020. And now, a company called Colossal Biosciences is using it to try to bring back the woolly mammoth. Colossal was founded in 2021 by Harvard geneticist George Church and entrepreneur Ben Novak. Church is one of the most brilliant and controversial scientists alive. He's been working on mammoth de-extinction since 2015, and he was one of the early pioneers of CRISPR technology. Colossal raised over $75 million in its first funding round, later growing to over $225 million, and has assembled a team of world-class geneticists, computational biologists, and conservation scientists. Their goal is not, strictly speaking, to clone a woolly mammoth. That would require a complete, intact mammoth genome and a viable egg cell, neither of which currently exists. Instead, Colossal's approach is something more nuanced, and in many ways more fascinating. They're working to create what they call a functional mammoth by editing the genome of the Asian elephant, the mammoth's closest living relative. Here's the science of it. The Asian elephant and the woolly mammoth share roughly 99.6% of their DNA. That might sound like they're nearly identical, but 0.4% of a genome 3 billion base pairs long is still a lot of differences, about 4 million individual nucleotide variations, and those differences matter enormously. They encode the traits that allowed the mammoth to survive in minus 40 degrees Celsius temperatures, while the elephant thrives in tropical heat. The key mammoth-specific traits that scientists have identified include several remarkable adaptations. First, cold-resistant hemoglobin. Mammoth blood carried a special mutation in its hemoglobin, the protein that carries oxygen in red blood cells, that allowed it to release oxygen efficiently even in freezing temperatures. Normal elephant hemoglobin struggles in the cold. Second, thick subcutaneous fat deposits. Mammoths had up to 4 inches of fat beneath their skin, providing insulation against Arctic cold. Third, the iconic shaggy coat. Mammoths had 3 layers of hair, a fine undercoat, a middle layer, and long outer guard hairs up to 3 feet long. This coat trapped air and provided extraordinary thermal insulation. Fourth, small ears. If you look at a woolly mammoth compared to an elephant, one of the most obvious differences is the ears. Elephant ears are enormous. They're designed to radiate heat and cool the animal down. Mammoth ears were small and compact, minimizing heat loss. And fifth, a specialized sebaceous gland. Mammoths had glands that produced oils that coated their hair, preventing it from becoming brittle and breaking in extreme cold. Colossal scientists have identified the specific gene variants responsible for each of these traits by comparing the mammoth genome to the elephant genome, and now they're using CRISPR to insert those variants into elephant stem cells, one by one, building up a genetic profile that captures the key cold weather adaptations of the mammoth. But the science doesn't stop there. There's a deeper challenge that doesn't get talked about enough. Even if you successfully edit elephant cells to carry mammoth-like genes, you still need to grow a whole animal from those cells. And that's where things get really complicated. The normal approach to de-extinction would be to put the edited nucleus into an elephant egg cell, a technique called somatic cell nuclear transfer, the same method used to clone Dolly the sheep in 1996. The problem is that Asian elephants are endangered, with fewer than 50,000 individuals remaining in the wild. Getting viable elephant eggs requires invasive procedures, and the elephant conservation community is deeply uncomfortable with using endangered elephants as surrogates for a de-extinction project. Colossal has a potential solution, and it's arguably even more impressive than the CRISPR work. They are working to develop an artificial womb, an external gestational system that could gestate a mammoth-elephant hybrid embryo without requiring a surrogate mother at all. Artificial wombs, also called ectogenesis systems, have been developed for premature human babies and for lambs, but nothing at the scale of an elephant pregnancy, which lasts 22 months, the longest of any land animal. This is a massive unsolved engineering challenge, and Colossal is working on it. Alternatively, Colossal is also working to convert elephant cells into induced pluripotent stem cells, basically resetting adult cells back to an embryonic state, which can then be differentiated into any cells type, including egg cells. If they can create elephant egg cells in the lab, they eliminate the need for live donors entirely. The timeline that Colossal has put forward is ambitious. They believe they can produce a cold-adapted elephant-mammoth hybrid within 4 to 6 years and potentially have a calf within the following decade. Their most optimistic projections suggest that by 2035, a creature with the key characteristics of the woolly mammoth could be born. Now, I want to take a step back here because this is the point where a lot of smart, thoughtful people start asking hard questions. And those questions deserve serious answers. The first and most obvious question is, why? Why spend hundreds of millions of dollars and the best scientific talent of a generation trying to bring back an extinct animal? Is this just rich people playing God for fun? Is it a vanity project dressed up as science? The answer that Colossal and their supporters give is actually much more compelling than you might expect. It's not primarily about nostalgia for a prehistoric animal. It's about climate change. Remember the Mammoth Steppe, that vast, productive grassland that covered the northern hemisphere during the Ice Age? There's a scientist named Sergei Zimov who has been working for decades in Siberia on a project called Pleistocene Park. Zimov's argument is that the loss of the mammoth and other large herbivores is directly contributing to climate change today. Here's his reasoning. The Arctic permafrost contains an enormous amount of frozen organic carbon, the decomposed remains of plants and animals from the Ice Age. Scientists estimate that the Arctic permafrost holds more carbon than all of the world's forests combined, somewhere between 1.5 and 7 trillion metric tons. As the climate warms and the permafrost thaws, that carbon is released as methane and carbon dioxide, accelerating global warming in a dangerous feedback loop. Zimov and his son Nikita have been reintroducing large herbivores, horses, bisons, musk oxen, into a section of Siberian tundra to test a theory. His theory is that grazing animals maintain the permafrost in a cold state. How? By trampling snow. Snow is actually an insulator. A deep snow cover traps heat in the ground and prevents the permafrost from freezing as deeply as it otherwise would. Large herds of animals trampling through the snow all winter compress it, reducing its insulating effect and allowing the cold to penetrate deeper into the ground. Data from Pleistocene Park supports this. In areas where animals graze, winter ground temperatures are measurably colder than in areas without grazing animals. If you could reintroduce large herds of grazing animals, and especially large, powerful grazers like mammoths, across the vast Arctic grasslands, you might be able to slow permafrost thaw significantly, buying time in the fight against climate change. This is the ecological argument for mammoth de-extinction. It's not about bringing back a cool prehistoric animal. It's about deploying a natural engineering solution to one of the most urgent environmental problems on the planet. Still, critics remain skeptical, and their objections are worth taking seriously. One major criticism is the opportunity cost argument. The money and talent being poured into de-extinction could be used to protect existing endangered species. Right now, we are in the 6th mass extinction event in Earth's history. Species are going extinct at a rate 1,000 times higher than the natural background rate. Tigers, rhinos, orangutans, giraffes. Hundreds of charismatic, ecologically important species are on the edge of disappearing. Wouldn't it make more sense to save the living rather than resurrect the dead? Colossal responds to this argument in two ways. First, they argue that the technologies being developed for mammoth de-extinction, advanced CRISPR tools, artificial wombs, stem cell techniques, will have direct applications in conservation biology. The same tools that help engineer cold-resistant elephants could be used to help endangered species adapt to climate change, to combat disease, to boost genetic diversity in inbred populations. Colossal has already spun off projects to protect the critically endangered Asian elephant and to work on the conservation of the African forest elephant. Second, they argue that the mammoth itself is a conservation priority. Bringing back functional mammoths and establishing herds in the Arctic would restore an apex herbivore to an ecosystem that has been ecologically impoverished since the end of the Ice Age. The benefits to permafrost preservation could be enormous. A second major criticism concerns animal welfare. What is the experience of the first mammoth-elephant hybrid like? It will be born into a world it never evolved for, without a mother of its own kind, without a social group. Elephants are highly social, emotionally complex animals. The first calves produced by this project will be, in some sense, alone in a way no animal has ever been alone before. What responsibilities do scientists have to the welfare of the animals they create? Colossal says they take this seriously and are planning for socialization strategies, potentially using domesticated Asian elephants as surrogate family members. But critics are not fully satisfied with these answers, and honestly, this remains an open ethical question that doesn't have an easy resolution. A third criticism is ecological uncertainty. Even if you successfully grow mammoth-elephant hybrids and release them into the Arctic, what happens? The Arctic ecosystem of today is not the same as the mammoth steppe of 10,000 years ago. The plants are different. The predators are different. The climate is different. How will these animals interact with the existing ecosystem? Could they cause unforeseen harm? Could they compete with or displace other animals? This is a legitimate concern, and it's one that ecologists take seriously. The history of introduced species is full of cautionary tales, but proponents of the project argue that reintroducing a grazer that co-evolved with the Arctic ecosystem for hundreds of thousands of years is fundamentally different from introducing a foreign invasive species. The ecosystem still has the memory of the mammoth encoded in its plants and its soil. It's also worth noting that Colossal's animals, at least initially, won't be released into the wild. They'll be managed in controlled environments where scientists can monitor their behavior, health, and ecological impact before any decisions are made about broader introduction. Now let's zoom out even further, because the mammoth is not the only animal that Colossal and other researchers are working to de-extinct. The woolly mammoth grabs headlines, but the science of resurrection biology is advancing on multiple fronts simultaneously. Colossal also has an active project to bring back the Tasmanian tiger, also called the thylacine, an apex predator that went extinct in 1936. The last known individual died in a Hobart Zoo in September 1936, just 62 days after the species was officially granted legal protection. The thylacine's genome has been sequenced, and Colossal is working to use the fat-tailed dunnart, a small marsupial, as a genetic starting point to rebuild the thylacine through CRISPR editing. There's also active work on the dodo, the passenger pigeon, which once darkened North American skies in flocks of billions before being hunted to extinction in 1914, and the gastric brooding frog, an Australian species with a remarkable ability to swallow its fertilized eggs and brood its young in its stomach. What's emerging is something that didn't exist even 10 years ago, an entire field of science dedicated to the question of whether extinction is truly permanent. And the honest answer, increasingly, is maybe not. But here's the thing I want you to sit with as we wrap up. This isn't just a story about science. It's a story about responsibility. We live in an age where human activity has driven species to extinction, is warming the planet, and is degrading ecosystems that took millions of years to develop. De-extinction science is, in part, a response to that. It's an acknowledgement that we broke something, and a question, audacious, controversial, expensive, about whether we can fix it. There's something deeply human about that impulse. We've always been a species that refuses to accept that things are lost forever. We build museums to preserve the past. We write books to transmit culture across millennia. We plant trees we'll never see grow to full height. The Mammoth Project is, in a sense, the most extreme expression of that same human refusal to accept permanent loss. George Church, when asked about why he dedicates his career to this project, has said something that I find quietly profound. He says that the question isn't really whether we can bring back the mammoth. The question is whether we have a moral obligation to try. We drove them to the edge. We have the tools. What does it say about us if we choose not to act? Now, I'm not here to tell you that Colossal will succeed. The challenges are enormous. The timeline is optimistic. The ethical questions are real. And the history of big, bold science projects is full of visions that never fully materialized. But I am here to tell you that this is serious science done by serious people, with a genuine potential to change both our understanding of what's possible and the actual state of the living world. The woolly mammoth walked this earth for hundreds of thousands of years. It shaped the land, fed the soil, and lived in families not entirely unlike our own. It didn't go quietly. And now in laboratories in Boston and Dallas and Cambridge, scientists armed with molecular scissors and the complete blueprint of a vanished species are asking a question that would have been pure fantasy just 20 years ago. What if extinction doesn't have to be the end? Watch this space. Because the next few years of this story are going to be ones you want to have followed from the beginning. If this blew your mind even a fraction as much as it blew mine, hit that like button. It genuinely helps more people find this content, and I want everyone to know about this story. Subscribe if you're not already, because we go deep on exactly this kind of science every single week. And drop a comment below. I want to know, do you think we should bring back the mammoth? Is this a triumph of human ingenuity? An ecological lifeline? Or are we playing with fire? There's no wrong answer, and I read every single comment. I'll see you in the next one.